Chapter 1. The Unsettled Alpha. The scent of blood was not the problem. Blood was just life, spilled or contained. The problem was the smell of ozone and iron, a clean, sterile chill that shouldn't exist in the heart of the Redwood Sanctuary. Rhys, alpha of the ancient, weary pack, pressed his thumbs hard against his temples. He was supposed to be reviewing security reports for the outreach hub, but the low, simmering hostility of two young wolves, Marta and Finn, was pulling at his concentration like a dull, throbbing toothache. They stood by the fire pit, their shoulders locked in a silent challenge over territory he'd assigned fairly just that morning. Mine, their subconscious minds growled, a common, childish squabble. This was his job. Not grand battles, but maintaining the intricate, fragile pack peace. He let his empathic sense, his curse and his crutch reach out. It felt like dipping his hand into a tub of static electricity. Focus, Rhys. Control. He sent a gentle, firm wave of calm toward Marta, subtly reminding her of the potential consequences of a public shift. And just like that, everything changed. Marta's tense shoulders slumped. She let out a frustrated sigh, pushing Finn away with a simple human shove instead of a snarl. Rhys managed to smooth the incident over, but the exertion left him exhausted. He rubbed the bridge of his nose. Being an alpha was less about ferocity and more about being a psychic policeman. He was burdened by the constant need to police every emotion, every tremor of unease, keeping the pack hidden and stable. He desperately wanted to believe his approach, the soft hand, the slow integration with the human world, was the right way because the alternative, the old way, only brought massacres. That's why he allowed the outreach hub to exist, because he needed human intelligence. He had to maintain pack peace and secure external resources, but he was slowly learning that his vulnerable, human-leaning leadership style might be costing them more than it saved. Still, his thoughts circled back to the weird metallic scent. It wasn't sweat or blood or rain. It was synthetic, almost like dry ice and cold steel. An anomaly. It had lingered since he allowed the new intake of human staff 2 weeks ago. He tried to dismiss it, because his beta, Liam, had cleared the zone. Liam was solid, but Liam lacked Rhys's empathic sight. What followed was Rhys pulling up the file for the human operative, Cora. Her file was impeccably clean, flawless work, efficient, zero personal digital footprint. A ghost on paper. He zoomed in on her photo, eyes that were sharp, practical, and utterly devoid of warmth. A perfect operative. Could my instincts be wrong? He wondered. Maybe he was just getting paranoid in his old age. He couldn't afford a single moment of doubt. Not now, when human aggression was rising locally. He needed to get his head clear for the morning staff meeting. The metallic tang returned, catching the back of his throat like a swallowed coin. He pushed the feeling down. He had to trust the systems he built. He needed to prepare for the meeting with Cora. Chapter 2. The Blank Wall. The Alpha's private conference room was usually a hub of comfortable tension, where Rhys used his empathy to gauge the truth beneath the pleasantries. But this morning, the room felt like a freezer. Come morning, the key human liaison staff gathered, and Rhys focused on his primary goal: validate his human integration strategy and check Cora's operational status. Cora, her real name Vespera hidden behind a perfect veneer, stood to give her report on the outreach hub. She was precise, her voice a low, even murmur that held no cadence of emotion. She detailed supply chains, bureaucratic compliance, and public sentiment with mathematical accuracy. Not only that, her report exceeded all projections. Truth be told, Rhys was impressed by her competence, but the feeling was quickly overridden by the unnerving sight of her internal state. To his powerful empathic sense, everyone in the room glowed with a faint, readable color: anxiety, ambition, boredom. But Cora? She was a blank wall. A void. It felt like trying to hear a sound that was impossible for the human ear. Rhys leaned forward, a subtle test. The compliance report is excellent, Cora. But are you certain about the city's proposed zoning changes? They seem suspiciously aggressive. She met his gaze directly. Her eyes were a flat, pale blue, like chipped ice. Alpha Rhys, she said, her voice completely devoid of any rise or fall. My assessment is based purely on multivariate risk analysis. Emotion is not a factor. The current threat level is quantifiable, not subjective. As the silence stretched, Rhys felt a deep, instinctive chill. She was technically correct, but her absolute lack of feeling while discussing life and death stakes was chilling. It confirmed Cora's high-value status while simultaneously highlighting Rhys's empathic failure to penetrate her. "I see," Rhys murmured. He tried to force a polite smile, but it felt stiff, like cold clay on his face. He watched the subtle movements of her hands. They were strong, practical, and completely steady. Hands that never shake. He tried to catch a flicker of fear or guilt, because every human felt something when facing an alpha. Instead, she simply tucked her report under her arm. "Is there anything else, Alpha?" "Yes." "Why can't I feel you? Why do you smell like a hunting knife left out in the cold?" He wanted to demand. But then, he remembered his role, his reliance on facts and structure. He needed this information source. He dismissed the feeling, suppressing the first, true spark of distrust in his own senses. As the truth unraveled beneath the surface, Rhys allowed his reliance on her results to eclipse his visceral instincts. He gave a slight nod. She returned it with a professional void and turned, leaving the room with the efficient gait of someone whose time was always better spent elsewhere. Not only that, but Rhys felt the distinct jolt of attraction when she moved, a deep, ancient pull completely disconnected from her cold persona. A powerful open loop. He couldn't shake the magnetic pull, yet he felt certain he had just watched a snake shed its skin right in front of him. He knew he needed to resolve this confusing duality before it endangered the pack. Chapter 3. The Final Doubt. The sanctuary was a vast, sprawling estate, but Rhys's sleep was usually deep. That night, however, anxiety clawed at him. That night, the metallic scent was back, stronger than ever, drifting through the ancient stone halls of the sanctuary. Rhys tossed, then gave up, pulling on a thin tunic. His primary goal had become simple: settle his rising, baseless paranoia about her coldness and exercise his alpha role one last time to ensure the perimeter was secure. He tracked the source to the main perimeter gate. There, standing alone, was Cora. She was meticulously checking security camera angles, her tablet glowing faintly in the moonlight. "Cora," Rhys's voice was low, carrying the quiet authority of an alpha who did not expect to be questioned. "What are you doing here?" "It's past curfew for human staff." She turned, not with a jump of surprise, but with the measured movement of a predator checking its flank. Her voice was flat. "Alpha, I noticed a minor discrepancy in the final inventory checklist. I wanted to confirm the new thermal lens calibrations before the systems locked down at midnight." Rhys approached her slowly. He could see the faint lines of concentration around her eyes. She was good. Too good. The unnatural, cold dread he felt earlier sharpened, slicing through his gut like a metallic spike. "Hunter." The silent, primal part of him screamed the warning. Despite that, the human, civilized part of him argued, "She's a dedicated operative. You can't accuse her of treason because she smells clean." Rhys reached out with his hand, intending to check the camera himself, but his fingers brushed her forearm. In that moment, a profound, confusing sensory overload struck him. The metallic scent intensified, mingling with an overwhelming surge of primal recognition.
"Mate."
The word was not a thought. It was a thunderclap in his soul. It was instantly drowned out by her conscious rage, a silent, focused fury that hit him like a physical blow. Rhys snatched his hand back, his heart skipping a beat. He stumbled slightly. "The calibrations are fine," he managed, trying to steady his voice. He realized with terrifying clarity that she had allowed him to see her true emotional state for a fraction of a second. Pure hatred. Cora's expression didn't change. She nodded once. "Understood, Alpha. I'll retire now. Good night." She walked away, leaving Rhys paralyzed by the conflicting signals. An assassin who triggered his deepest instinct of the mate bond. It was an impossibility. Maybe it was fate, but it felt like a cruel joke. He had to trust his reliance on external evidence, because trusting his instinct meant admitting the woman he was bound to was here to kill him. As the wind shifted, carrying her metallic scent away, Rhys dismissed the strong warning from his alpha instinct for the sake of learned trust, sealing his own doom. He watched her figure disappear into the shadows. He had given her the all-clear, allowing Vespera the final access point for the assassination. He turned toward his private chambers, his head pounding. He felt foolish for his paranoia, yet every fiber of his being screamed that he was wrong. He wished the metallic, hunter's scent would just leave his senses, but he knew, deep down, it was already woven into his life. He was alpha. He was protected, wasn't he? Chapter 4. The Primal Shock. The scent of ozone and iron wasn't a warning anymore. It was death. Without warning, the bedroom door, crafted from centuries-old oak, splintered inward with a sharp crack. Rhys, jolted from a light, troubled sleep, was instantly on his feet. He didn't even have time to shift fully. Instead, a dark, human shape was already lunging. It was Cora.
No, Vespera.
She moved with terrifying practice speed. The moonlight, slicing through the new gap in the door, gleamed off a narrow, wicked blade, a specialized hunter's knife, designed to pierce a wolf's hide before the silver poisons could even act. Before she could move, Rhys roared, a guttural sound torn from his half-shifted throat. He managed to grab her wrist, twisting hard. She didn't scream. She didn't even gasp. Her focus was absolute, a terrifying, single-minded machine. She drove a knee into his ribs, and the shock of impact momentarily paralyzed his breathing. As her wolf stirred, a desperate, concealed alpha energy surging to ensure the kill, it hit him. Not the knife. The mate bond. It didn't just snap into existence, it exploded. It was a blinding, agonizing physical concussion, a white-hot lightning strike that tore through his chest and slammed into his soul. His vision blurred. Utter chaos and visceral pain ripped through him, and just like that, everything changed. In the span of a breath, the agonizing shock was twinned with a sudden, overwhelming, ancient sense of rightness.
Mine.
The raw surge of the bond feedback must have hit her too. She faltered. Her eyes, still cold chips of ice, momentarily widened in horror at the unwanted connection. That single, infinitesimal beat of surprise was all Rhys needed, which meant he could have ended her. He could have broken her neck, silencing the threat forever. But the mate bond, newly formed and terrifyingly absolute, demanded one thing: protection. Instead, Rhys used a non-lethal command, a precise, shocking pressure point he learned centuries ago, to knock her unconscious. He kept the hunter's blade pointed safely away from his skin. The wound on his flank was superficial, easily healed. The wound in his spirit? That was catastrophic. He stared down at the silent woman, the assassin who was here to kill him. Not only that, but she was his mate. Deep down, she knew the truth too. He realized, looking at the pure, horrified look that had crossed her face right before the darkness claimed her. She was now bound to the target she was sent to destroy. He staggered back, leaning against a cold stone wall, the scent of fresh wood smoke and the metallic tang of her skin filling his lungs. He was alive. His world was broken. He had to get her secure. He couldn't kill his mate, even if she tried to kill him. And he certainly couldn't let his pack find her here. Chapter 5. The Bewildered Declaration. The sanctuary's highest security, reinforced holding room smelled of steel and fear. Hours had passed. Rhys was physically whole, his alpha healing having stitched the knife wound quickly, but emotionally, he felt like he'd been flayed. After that, he personally secured Vespera. Now, he stood before the cell, watching her stir. His current goal was desperate: force Vespera to reveal her true motive and somehow reconcile the pure, ancient scent of mate with the lingering, potent smell of wolf hunter. Vespera, or Cora, woke with a snap. She was instantly alert, her blue eyes scanning the steel walls, assessing her prison. She didn't plead or cry. She didn't even look scared. Rhys paced, his steps loud on the concrete floor. "Why did you try to kill me, Cora?" She didn't try to deny the attempt, only the method. Her voice was steady, utterly devoid of guilt. My mission was compromised. External factors. It was a clean execution attempt. Alpha, nothing personal. If I had succeeded, your pack would have suffered a short period of disarray, but the structure remains sound. He stopped, pressing his forehead against the cold bars. You are lying. I am stating the facts, she countered. The lie isn't in the mission, Rhys snarled, his wolf closer to the surface than he liked. The lie is you. You are not Cora, the operative. You are something else. As the silence roared, Rhys reached out with his empathy, pushing hard against her mind, searching for a crack in the facade. Nothing. Her emotional field remained a void, a perfectly blank wall. That's why he felt such disbelief and profound hurt. His greatest power, his empathic sight, was completely neutralized by her contradictory signals. On the other hand, the bond was a raging torrent. It pulsed, demanding recognition. It demanded he protect her, comfort her, and claim her. It was agony. I need to know who you are, Rhys whispered, the alpha authority draining out of his voice, replaced by the raw ache of the mate bond. Tell me you were framed. Tell me you didn't mean it. She finally looked him in the eye, and the hate was back, cold and sharp. I meant every second. In the echo of his voice, he heard the truth she couldn't speak, but the bond screamed. Vengeance. Justice. Rhys straightened, his decision made. He couldn't kill her. He was desperate to prove the bond is wrong, but the bond was the only thing that felt real at this moment. You failed, he said, his voice flat with finality. I should execute you for attempted regicide. But I can't. Because of that, you are confined here. You are not a prisoner of war. He paused, letting the raw, brutal truth hit the sterile air. You are my mate. He left the cell immediately. He knew his pack would revolt if they knew, and the only way to contain the secret was through ruthless control. He ordered heavy guard, abandoning the sanctuary's traditional mercy for captives. Chapter 6. The Beta's Doubt. The Beta's office was small, windowless, and designed for crisis. Liam, Rhys's second, stood with arms crossed, his gaze hard. Liam was traditional, loyal, and already deeply distrustful of the human element Rhys championed. Meanwhile, Rhys fought the crushing headache and the dull, persistent ache of the bond, which felt like a limb he was trying to amputate. His immediate goal was simple but vital: maintain alpha control and conceal the catastrophic personal cost of the bond failure. The assassin is secure, Rhys stated, keeping his voice even. He deliberately minimized the mate aspect of the attack, focusing only on the breach of security. She is a highly trained operative of an unknown group, possibly the Order. Liam's low growl vibrated in the small room. An unknown group? She worked in our hub for 6 months, Rhys. She gave you your morning coffee. That's why she knew the shift patterns. And you let her live. She is valuable. She has information. Information. Liam stepped closer, his wolf scent rising, challenging. She put a blade in you. Our pack law is clear. Betrayal must be met with death, swift and final. You are letting emotion cloud your judgment. The pack's faith in Rhys's judgment was instantly challenged, and Rhys felt the true fear of internal pack rupture. Not only that, but Liam was touching on a painful truth. Rhys was too emotional, too prone to trust his human side. Rhys met Liam's stare, injecting his alpha command into the air. I am alpha. She stays alive. Her interrogation is a priority. Do you question my command, Beta? Liam held the stare for a terrifying beat. With every heartbeat, Rhys feared his Beta would openly defy him, splitting the pack in two. Instead, Liam backed down slowly.
No, Alpha.
But understand this. If she compromises the sanctuary, I will bypass protocol. Liam's voice dropped to a warning whisper. We rely on you to be the shield. You must be ruthless. As the silence stretched between them, Rhys felt a profound isolation. Liam was right. Rhys had locked himself into the conflict, He must protect his mate/assassin to save his pack, but his pack only saw her as the threat. Rhys nodded, acknowledging the danger. We will fortify the perimeter. Double the night patrols. Trust no one outside the inner circle. But then, as Rhys turned to leave, he felt a sharp, cutting shock delivered straight from the cell, a few hundred yards away. It wasn't pain. It was a clear, unfiltered flash of Vespera's pure hatred, a stark reminder of the deadly, consuming conflict that now defined his life. She was laughing at his weakness. Is this connection a curse that will destroy my pack, or the strength needed to save it? The haunting question hung in the air.
He was locked in.
The assassination had failed, but the real war, the internal, emotional one, had just begun. He had to face his mate again. Chapter 7. The Forced Proximity. The scent of blood was long gone, replaced by the faint, agonizing static of the mate bond. After that brutal confrontation with Liam, Rhys knew he couldn't leave Vespera locked away. The danger wasn't just physical, it was relational. If the bond was going to destroy him, he needed to understand how, and isolation wouldn't provide answers. Meanwhile, his primary goal was to break her emotional shield, Cora, and force the alpha, Vespera, beneath to surface. He ordered her moved, not to freedom, but to a highly monitored, secluded wing of the inner sanctuary, close enough for the bond to churn, but far from the pack's common areas. He found her standing by a large, reinforced window. She wore the clean, simple clothes provided, stripped of any hidden weapons. She looked deceptively calm. Rhys walked to the window, crowding her space deliberately. You're out of the cell, mate. Don't mistake this for mercy. It's control. You are contained, and I am watching. She didn't flinch. Instead, she turned her head slowly, meeting his gaze. A cage is a cage, Alpha. You prefer yours to be upholstered. Her voice was still low, even a study in forced neutrality. He reached out with his empathy, pushing harder than before, trying to flood her mind with the confusion, the frustration, the sheer primal recognition he felt. Feel me. Feel the bond. As the silence stretched, he felt nothing. Absolutely nothing. It was like shouting into the vacuum of space. He learned that Vespera was immune to his empathic probes, indicating a powerful, trained mental shield, a hunter skill far beyond normal human strength. Not only that, but the sheer effort of trying to breach her composure left him dizzy. You have no fear, Rhys accused, the question heavy with disbelief. Every human, every wolf, fears an alpha. I am trained, she stated, looking past him, already analyzing the room. Fear is a tactical liability. He watched her hands. They were resting loosely at her sides, but he could almost see the phantom weight of a weapon in her grip. Even so, he saw her subtle movements. Her eyes tracked the patrolling beta outside, the weak point in the window's sealant, the location of the panic button. She was still assessing the sanctuary, but now as a prisoner of war who intended to escape, not just an assassin. She isn't just human, Rhys realized with a sickening jolt. She is a weapon designed to negate everything I am. That's why he felt increasingly frustrated by her control, yet strangely compelled by the puzzle of her resistance. He was forced to recognize that his old approach wouldn't work. Under the weight of his stare, Vespera finally spoke, but not to him. She murmured, Your security patrols are too predictable. They rely on scent, not sight, on this quadrant. It's an easy exploit. Rhys felt a flash of irritation at the unsolicited critique, quickly followed by a cold dread. She was right. Rhys watched her analyze the pack's movements and security flaws with a cold, disconcerting predator's efficiency. He knew he had to use this. He had to pivot. He gave a sharp nod. You criticize my defenses. Then come and see how we train. He needed to move her, to test the depth of her hostile knowledge. Chapter 8. The Strategic Insight. The training grounds were muddy and smelled of pine and damp earth. Rhys's pack was going through a morning defensive ritual, an outdated, predictable movement passed down through generations. After that strange, charged silence, Rhys marched Vespera toward the edge of the grounds. His current goal was to assess her counterpack knowledge, searching for utility in the assassin. He was deeply defensive of his pack's traditions because they were all he had left of his father's memory. "Observe, mate," Rhys said, injecting a layer of sarcasm into the title. "This is a demonstration of coordinated defense against a large, hostile shifter threat. Our heart is in unity." The wolves moved in tight formation, powerful and primal. But Vespera made a noise, a soft, almost imperceptible scoff. "Something amusing, Cora?" Rhys challenged, his pride stung. Instead of offering a placating lie, Vespera stepped forward, her voice rising slightly with strategic impatience. As if fate demanded it, she delivered a critique that cut him to the core. "Your formations are circular. Effective against a single, brute enemy pack," she began, pointing with a long, steady finger. "But against a prepared, non-shifter threat, like the hunters, it's suicide. Your center is too dense. A single dose of a neurotoxin payload, delivered via a pressure vessel right there." She jabbed her finger at a key convergence point, "and you lose 30% of your fighting force before they can shift fully." Rhys's wolf bristled. He felt humiliated and defensive, but her logic was chillingly accurate. He had been focusing on shifter threats, ignoring the sophisticated human enemies. "That's theory," Rhys retorted, but his voice lacked conviction. "It is standard countershifter protocol, Alpha," Vespera replied, completely unfazed by his alpha aggression. "Your pack relies too heavily on raw strength and heart. It makes you vulnerable. You need dispersed formations and modern chemical countermeasures. Or," she paused, a genuine flicker of something that looked like ruthless respect in her eyes, "you need more rage." Because of that cold, accurate assessment, Rhys's internal world shifted. He was forced to acknowledge her superior strategic mind. The first, painful crack appeared in his belief that pack, heart, was enough defense. "My traditional leadership is vulnerable." He realized he had been leading an 18th century army into a 21st century war, which meant he had to find a way to use her knowledge. "Where did you learn this, Vespera?" he asked, using her true name for the first time. The icy exterior wavered. "Enough to know what kills wolves," she answered simply. Later, as the pack dispersed, Rhys found his beta, Liam, waiting, his face tight. Liam pointed toward the thick line of trees at the sanctuary's periphery. Before either could speak, the beta handed Rhys a pair of powerful binoculars. Scouts reported activity. "Human. They're too cautious, too organized. Like they're mapping our blind spots." Rhys looked through the lens. He saw movement, the quick flicker of specialized reflective gear, the order's reconnaissance. Vespera's former people. He felt a wave of cold dread. The stakes had suddenly gotten much, much higher. Chapter 9. The Father's Record. The air in the Alpha archives was heavy with the dust of centuries, a suffocating smell of dry paper and forgotten history. After that terrifying confirmation of the Order's presence, Rhys needed the historical context. His immediate goal was to find the truth behind Vespera's vengeance, the catastrophic event, justifying his survival and, perhaps, giving him leverage. He located his father's old journal, bound in brittle leather. He sat at a mahogany desk, the wood smelling faintly of old whiskey and regret. He flipped past pages detailing land deeds and pack lineage until he found a cryptic entry from 25 years ago. In the quiet that followed, Rhys read the messy, panicked script of his father. "The Kalins are gone. My fault?
No."
The truce was set. The third scent, too strong, too clean. They used the conflict to wipe them out, making it look like my doing. They wanted the land, but they created a blood feud. May the gods forgive me for the lie. I must tell the pack." Rhys sat back, stunned. His core belief of being guilty was shattered. He was pained, burdened, and realized the scope of his pack's dark history. He had been hated by Vespera, hunted by his mate, for a lie, a tragedy orchestrated by a third party. The vengeance was real, but the target was wrong. Why did my father lie? Because he feared the pack couldn't withstand the truth of such a powerful, manipulative enemy working in the shadows. which meant Vespera Kalen was not just an assassin. She was a victim, just like him. He looked down at the journal, feeling a wave of terrible empathy for Vespera. Her hatred was built on sand, meticulously poured by the Order. As the truth unraveled, the stakes were raised from a personal assassination attempt to a matter of historic, political bloodshed. Rhys was now absolutely certain Vespera was Alpha Kalen, not just Cora. This was a plot twist that changed everything. In the echo of his voice, Rhys whispered the name he had suppressed. Vespera. He understood now. Their shared tragedy was not a consequence of the mate bond. It was a pre-existing wound the mate bond had merely exposed. If I can show her the truth, can I save us? This question, this open loop, was now his central focus. But then, the distant, shrill howl of the perimeter warning siren cut the night air, slicing through the quiet despair. It wasn't the slow siren, but the urgent, high-pitched one. The Order's immediate attack begins. As if summoned by his thoughts of the Kalen tragedy, the enemy was here, confirming Vespera's relevance and her danger. Rhys slammed the book shut. The time for historical reflection was over. He had to face the Order, and somehow, he had to keep his mate alive. Chapter 10. The Deadly Accuracy. The air was thick with the scent of burning foliage and acrid chemicals. After that terrifying alarm, Rhys didn't hesitate. He burst out of the archives, Liam already waiting, his face a mask of primal rage. Rhys's heart hammered against his ribs, not with fear, but with the cold, sick certainty that Vespera's tactical warning was about to become a bloody reality. But then, the ambush was instantaneous. Rhys and his beta engaged the Order's advance team in the northern clearing. They were professional, silent, and terrifyingly modern. Instead of relying on silver, the hunters deployed a small, specialized canister. It hissed, releasing a fine, airborne spray, not lethal, but designed to neutralize a specific biological receptor. In the span of a breath, Rhys felt his power dissolve. The familiar, exhilarating surge of his alpha shift, the stretching of bone, the rush of fur, stalled, crashing inside him like a wave hitting a cliff. He stumbled, his muscles locking up. Liam, a few feet away, fell to his knees, clutching his head, a frustrated, wounded whimper escaping his throat. They were paralyzed. Their shifting was disabled. Rhys struggled to breathe, the air thick with chemical weapons. He realized with devastating clarity. He walked directly into the exact trap Vespera had warned him about, the chemical payload deployed at a choke point, disabling the shifters before they could become a threat.
Circular formation.
Rhys gasped, forcing the words out, the humiliation burning hotter than the chemical air. Because of that clinging to outdated traditions, his pack was now exposed. His goal was reduced to one primal command: survive the ambush. Meanwhile, the hunters, dressed in light, armored tactical gear, moved with deadly precision, avoiding the traps Liam had set hours ago. They weren't looking to kill yet, they were looking to capture. Rhys managed to shove Liam behind a fallen log, his human strength pitiful against the professional attack. He felt angry at himself, resentful, and utterly humiliated that his enemy was right about his pack's vulnerabilities. As the bond pulsed, he could sense Vespera, watching through the security feed, cold and observant. Did you know this would happen? Are you enjoying this? That's why he felt a sudden, sharp, almost unbearable need for her. Not for comfort, but for her ruthless mind. He was cornered, his alpha power suppressed and useless. The fight was lost before it began, confirming the Order is a professional, modern threat that their traditional defenses cannot handle. He was forced to rely on the methods he instinctively distrusted. She is our only way out. Chapter 11. The CO Alpha's Roar. Rhys was pinned, a hunter's boot pressing hard on his chest. He could hear Liam's choked coughs nearby. At the same time, deep within the inner sanctuary, Vespera was watching the live feed of the ambush. Rhys's mind, incapacitated and desperate, was sending unfiltered waves of failure and pain through the newly forged bond. Suddenly, the energy changed. It wasn't the weak, conflicting push of the mate bond anymore. It was a devastating, self-igniting fire. Vespera's latent, suppressed alpha power broke free. A sound erupted through the sanctuary, a primal, raw, terrifying roar. It wasn't human. It was full-throated, pure alpha dominance, and it wasn't coming from Rhys. It shattered the surrounding dampening technology the Order had secretly installed. Rhys felt the roar not just in his ears, but in his very bones. Her voice trembled with untamed power. The scent of ozone and iron vanished, replaced by a pure, sharp, untamed alpha scent, the ancient, undeniable smell of his mate, now standing as his equal. The roar hit the hunters like a physical wave. They froze, momentarily stunned by the raw, unexpected power surge that cut through their sonic jammers. This was the midpoint revelation, the ultimate, crushing betrayal. Rhys stared up at the hunter on his chest, who was now swaying, momentarily disoriented by the sheer volume and primal command of the sound. The devastation Rhys felt was profound. She is a rival to Alpha. Not only that, but he was hit by a terrifying, visceral pride in her power, the undeniable strength of their shared moment. The hunter staggered back. Without thinking, Rhys seized the moment, rolling away and swiping the hunter's legs out from under him. The paralyzing drug was wearing off, but he was still sluggish. As the truth unraveled, Vespera appeared at the edge of the clearing. She was half-shifted, her eyes burning bright gold, the mark of a true alpha. She didn't have weapons. She didn't need them. She moved like liquid shadow, dismantling the two remaining advance guards with terrifying, efficient grace, using their own bodies as weapons. She was a hurricane of controlled ferocity. Just like that, everything changed. The game changer was complete. Hunter, spy, rival alpha, and mate. Rhys's trust was annihilated, yet he was forced to recognize her alpha status. The Order's retreat signal echoed, a coded voice in the hunter's comms naming her. Vespera Kalen. Retreat. Contain Kalen. Chapter 12. The Bitter Truce. The clearing was a mess of wreckage, smoke, and stunned, recovering wolves. Liam was already on his feet, snarling, heading straight for Vespera. After that terrifying revelation, Rhys knew he had to act fast, even though his body ached with betrayal and drug residue. He had to propose an alliance based purely on strategic necessity. Liam, stop. Rhys roared, his voice thin but laced with the full, desperate power of his alpha authority. Liam halted, trembling, his hatred palpable. Alpha. She is Kalen. She is the assassin, the rival. She must be executed now, or she will divide us. Vespera didn't even look at Liam. She stood over Rhys, radiating a cold, conquering power. The raw alpha scent was heavy in the air, marking their sudden, undeniable co-leadership. Rhys pushed himself up, ignoring the burning resentment and the pleas for vengeance surging from his beta. He realized he cannot deny two truths. She saved them, and she is his alpha mate. That's why he felt utterly conflicted, sacrificing pack pride for immediate survival. She is under my protection, Rhys commanded, his eyes locked on Vespera. She is a prisoner of war who just saved your life, Beta. Liam looked at Vespera, then at Rhys, his face a mix of disbelief and crushed loyalty. He slowly backed down, but the crack in their relationship was now a fissure. Rhys approached Vespera. The mate bond surged, demanding he apologize, demanding he submit to her power. He ignored it all, focusing on the tactical, intellectual connection. Why? Rhys asked, his voice raw. You saved me. Why? Vespera looked at the retreating hunters. Because your death would have been a public spectacle, Rhys. Their victory. And their victory ensures their continued existence. They're my enemy, too. With a single glance into her eyes, Rhys saw not just hatred, but a shared, focused vengeance. The immediate threat from the Order, who now hunt Vespera too, had forced the alliance. Rhys sacrificed his old, traditional identity to become the pragmatic strategist he needed to be. He extended a hand, focusing on her tactical mind, on the co-alpha he needed her to be. You know their weaknesses, he said, the words tasting like ash. "Help me protect my pack, Alpha Vespera." As if fate demanded it, Vespera looked down at his outstretched hand. The hatred was still there, but beneath it, the promise of a shared war. The next move was hers, and Rhys knew the fate of his entire pack depended on her answer. Chapter 13. The New Blueprint. The quiet that followed the attack was deceptive. It was the heavy silence before a storm. After that bitter truce, Rhys found himself in the main war room, forced to sit side by side with the woman who had tried to murder him. His current goal was to secure the sanctuary using Vespera's superior hunter intelligence, proving to the pack that his decision was strategic, not emotional. Meanwhile, Vespera was drawing lines on the sanctuary's blueprints with ruthless efficiency. Her posture was tense, but her focus was absolute. She was dismantling decades of pack tradition with a red marker. "This, Alpha," Vespera stated, circling the main lodge, "is a relic. It relies on honor. Hunters do not use honor. They use technology." Rhys felt deeply uncomfortable, battling the shame of betraying tradition. He had to dismantle his pack's entire security framework because the chemical attack proved his father's methods were obsolete. "The sensor net is insufficient," Vespera continued, her voice gaining an edge of professional frustration. Not only that, but her critique was meticulous. "The perimeter requires layered, infrared laser grids and a specific scent blocker, one the pack will hate, to confuse their animal tracking. The alpha chambers need an emergency kinetic dampener, not just thick walls." Rhys swallowed hard. He felt the weight of every wolf who had died under the old ways and the crushing necessity of her modern, human-centric tactics. "The scent blocker, it will feel like denial to them," he argued weakly. Vespera looked up, her golden eyes, now fully dominant and sharp, holding no patience. "Survival feels like denial, Rhys. Their sense of smell is their weakness, their arrogance. Exploit it." As the silence stretched, Rhys realized the true cost of the alliance. He was risking massive internal rebellion. He looked at Liam, who was standing stiffly by the door, his jaw clenched, his eyes burning with resentment. Rhys pushed his chair back, his decision finalized. He turned to Liam.
Beta.
"The old grids are to be decommissioned immediately. Vespera's blueprint is the new defense protocol. Execute the plan. Now." Liam stared at Rhys, then at Vespera, the insult of being commanded by his rival Alpha thick in the air. Despite that, Liam finally gave a tight, reluctant nod. "As you command, Alpha." Because of that open, public display of submission, Rhys felt resolute in the need for survival. He was irreversibly changing the pack's future. He noticed the way Vespera's focus seemed to silence the normal anxiety he felt when leading. She was a steady, cold anchor in the chaos he'd created. That night, he knew he was crossing the point of no return. Chapter 14. The Scarred Bond. The scent in the utility room was sterile, antiseptic, and tinged with something metallic, Vespera's own strange, lingering aura. After that arduous briefing, Rhys found Vespera in a small medical station, cleaning a jagged, 3-inch scar running across her ribs. It was old, deep, and clearly the result of anti-wolf weaponry. His goal was simple: heal her physical wounds and penetrate her emotional barrier via the bond's physical closeness. "Let me," Rhys commanded softly. His alpha healing was superior to any human suture. Vespera stiffened, her movements ceasing. "Unnecessary."
Evahendeld vers.
"It's not a request, mate," Rhys insisted, using the title deliberately to push the bond's emotional resonance. He knelt beside her. Instead of arguing further, Vespera slowly lowered her hands. Rhys gently touched the rigid, raised skin of the scar. In that moment, the close, non-romantic physical contact activated a powerful, protective surge from the mate bond. It hit Rhys like a sudden, fierce warmth, pure, instinctual protection for his wounded mate. It was overwhelming, completely overriding his past resentment. "What is this?" Vespera's breath hitched, the first involuntary sound he had ever heard from her. She pushed against the feeling, resisting the comforting heat of the bond. It's what you fought to deny, Rhys murmured, his fingers tracing the white, brutal line of the wound. It's a pain you carry. Who did this to you, Vespera? The Order? With every heartbeat, Rhys felt a deep connection to her pain. He realized Vespera's vengeance is rooted in genuine, deep trauma that mirrored his own pack's fear and history. Training, she bit out, pulling away slightly. They teach you to deny the wolf, strip the primal defenses. If you break, you become a perfect weapon. That's why she was so cold. They had broken her, and she had rebuilt herself into something unfeeling. Rhys's perspective shifted irrevocably. He now saw an ally, not just an assassin. As her wolf stirred beneath the surface, resisting the pain, Rhys felt a profound, protective instinct overwhelming his past resentment. The bond was solidifying their commitment outside of tactical necessity. Suddenly, a low, coded transmission crackled over the emergency radio in the corner, an intercepted message from the Order. It detailed a targeted strike against a hidden, non-pack location in the city. Vespera froze, her golden eyes widening in uncharacteristic terror. No, she breathed, the raw fear finally breaching her defenses. Not them. Not my people. Chapter 15. The First True Fight. The city's concrete smelled of rain and exhaust. The target location was a derelict warehouse district, Vespera's hidden pack, the survivors. Come morning, Rhys found himself standing beside Vespera, coordinating a joint strike team, a mix of loyal sanctuary wolves and Vespera's small, covert urban pack. His goal was to ensure his mate/ally survives this definitive break and protect the joint team. Rhys provided cover and intelligence, directing Liam and the others, while Vespera led the charge. He watched her move. At that moment, Vespera was no longer cold or strategic. She was pure, controlled ferocity. The Order had anticipated a standard wolf attack. They were not prepared for a hunter using their own urban environment against them. She moved through the shadows, silent, ruthless, utilizing stealth and leverage over brute strength. Rhys watched her ruthlessly, efficiently, and personally fight her former comrades. She didn't hesitate. She didn't use incapacitation. She killed them, ensuring her people were safe. As fire bloomed beneath her skin, Rhys felt the primal surge of the mate bond, not just shared energy, but shared bloodlust, shared victory. He was awestruck by her controlled ferocity, and the acceptance of this brutal necessity washed over him. That's why he knew the alliance was now unbreakable, bonded by shared blood and mutual enemies. Vespera completes her path of betrayal against the Order. She chose the wolves, she chose the bond, she chose them. What followed was the sound of retreat. The Order team was overwhelmed and scattered. Vespera stood over the last fallen hunter, her chest heaving, her gold eyes blazing. Even so, the victory felt brittle. As Vespera turned back to Rhys, battered but triumphant, a small, heavily encrypted device beeped on the ground beside the body of the last hunter. It was a direct, targeted broadcast. Rhys picked it up. A synthetic, chilling voice spoke clearly. Alpha Rhys, you cling to weakness. We know your heart. We know your reluctance. We will exploit your mercy. The message ended with a detailed image of the one part of the old sanctuary perimeter Rhys had been too hesitant to change, the ancestral burial grounds. It was a calculated trap, designed to exploit his well-known reluctance and empathy. The battle was won, but the war, Rhys realized, was about to target his deepest, oldest wounds. His hesitancy had just sealed his fate. Chapter 16. The Fatal Flaw. The ancestral burial grounds smelled of cold, damp earth and fading memory, the one place Rhys refused to taint with Vespera's scent blocker. After that chilling, personal message from the Order's leader, Rhys knew the trap was set. His goal, paradoxically, was to disarm it without admitting his ultimate weakness to Vespera. Instead of following Vespera's counsel, to eliminate the entire perimeter and relocate the remains, Rhys led a small team to reinforce the old, stone walls surrounding the graveyard. He was clinging to the last piece of pack history that had not yet been burned by this new war. In the echo of his voice, he told Vespera, "It is a symbolic threat. We draw them there, where their chemical weaponry will be less effective against the open air." It was a half-truth, but deep down, he knew the truth. He couldn't let go of the graves. The Order's trap worked perfectly. They didn't attack the walls. They attacked the soft ground immediately outside. A specialized hunter round, not a chemical, but a sophisticated kinetic dart laced with high-grade wolf venom, was fired from a hidden drone. It was silent, surgically precise, and targeted the junction point Rhys's old defense plans had left unprotected. What followed was a sharp, blinding agony. The dart plunged into his thigh, and the venom instantly flooded his system, paralyzing his alpha control and physical shift. He dropped to his knees, his entire body seizing up. He was severely wounded, the incapacitation immediate and complete. His alpha control was suppressed and useless. As if pulled by a string, Rhys used the last sliver of his conscious will to push a silent, desperate alpha command through the bond to Vespera, who was stationed on the other side of the sanctuary. "Flee.
Do not save me."
Because of that final, self-sacrificing order, he felt Vespera's horrified, surging obedience, the raw pain of the mate bond stretching taut and violent. He was captured, and the crushing realization that his reluctance and his old ways were fatal hit him harder than the venom. Rhys's traditional leadership was proven utterly inadequate. His capture proved that his hesitancy was a weakness, and his love for Vespera had blinded him to the final risk. He was dragged away, his last sight being Vespera's face on a distant monitor, not vengeful, but horrified, the mate bond a searing, painful line between them. Chapter 17. The True Lie. The air in the Order's underground facility was cold, sterile, and smelled of antiseptic and ozone, the familiar scent of his assassin, multiplied by 100. After that agonizing capture, Rhys was shackled to a cold metal table. The antagonist, the Order's leader, a tall, imposing man with eyes like polished flint, stood over him. Alpha Rhys. The antagonist's voice was calm, conversational, which was far worse than shouting. "Your fatal flaw is empathy. You trust too much. You protect too much." Meanwhile, through physical duress and empathic jamming technology surrounding him, the antagonist revealed the complex, devastating truth of Vespera's family death. "Your father," the leader began, leaning close, "did not kill Alpha Kalen. He was negotiating a truce, a formal agreement to share territories. But we intervened. We launched a specialized third-party ambush, making it look like a tragic accident caused by your pack's instability." His core belief of being hated by Vespera was shattered. Rhys was pinned by the lie, unable to deny it. That's why Vespera's hatred was so pure. She was fighting for a justice that did not involve him. The antagonist had engineered her entire life for vengeance, not against Rhys, but through him. With every heartbeat, Rhys endured the pain and tried desperately to find a way to communicate this truth to Vespera through the broken mate bond. He was isolated, his voice useless, but the bond was a mental highway. Instead of trying to shout, Rhys focused, summoning the deepest, most powerful memory he had just found in the archives, the image of his father attempting the truce, his face strained with sincerity, not murder. He pushed the memory out, a single, desperate, unprompted image of two alphas shaking hands before the disaster, hoping Vespera, wherever she was, received the emotional shockwave of the truth he couldn't speak. That night, Rhys's despair was profound, but it was coupled with a clarifying understanding of the historic injustice that drove Vespera. He now understands her pain, turning the vengeance narrative into a shared tragedy of misinformation. Chapter 18. Dark Night of the Soul. Hours bled into a gray, featureless blur. Rhys was alone in the quiet, damp cell, the venom slowly working its way out of his system, leaving him weak and broken. Still, he felt Vespera's presence through the bond, a surging torrent of grief and rage. She had received the memory. The pain in the bond was excruciating, but it was the pure pain of a wounded alpha finally seeing the truth, not the icy hatred of an assassin. As the bond pulsed, Rhys realized he couldn't save himself. His failure, his reluctance to be truly fierce, had condemned his mate and both packs. He had to face his ultimate flaw, his emotional paralysis. Deep down, he knew the truth. His old ways were too gentle for this world. He had fought the transformation from peacekeeper to warrior, and that hesitation had cost him his freedom. He accepted his failure. His final, self-sacrificing desire was for Vespera to survive, even if it meant permanently severing the bond for her sake, so she could lead without the guilt of his capture. "Live, Vespera," he whispered to the silence, to the bond, to the faint scent of ozone that mocked him. "Be the alpha I couldn't be." He hits rock bottom. Recognizing his weakness was inaction. The transformation of his character was almost complete. He was ready to sacrifice himself to let Vespera be the alpha they both needed, ruthless, modern, and without the burden of his mercy. A beat later, the steel door hissed open. The antagonist was back, carrying a heavy audio transmitter. "Time for the final broadcast, Alpha," the leader said, a cruel smile spreading across his face. "We plan to execute Rhys publicly at the sanctuary ruins. The world must see that the alpha of the old ways is weak." Before the words left her lips, Rhys felt Vespera's response, a cold, focused determination that surged through the bond, not sorrow. She was coming. He had failed himself, but he had succeeded in creating the warrior needed to save them all. Now he just had to survive long enough to aid her. Chapter 19. The Alpha's Will. The sound of the antagonist preparing the broadcast had been the last, bitter sound of Rhys's old life. After that chilling announcement, Rhys lay helpless, focusing his battered mind on the mate bond. His heart was filled with despair, but suddenly, the despair broke. He sensed Vespera's approach, but it wasn't the frenzied rage of a rescue. It was cold, focused, absolute. Instead of sorrow, Rhys felt a powerful, concentrated alpha command surge through the bond. "Hold.
Prepare."
At that moment, Vespera's internal transformation was complete. She had accepted her destiny as the sole leader, the strategist, the warrior. Rhys felt a surge of pure, defiant pride. The mate bond, for the first time since its agonizing activation, felt like strength, not pain. His immediate goal was clear: cooperate with Vespera's strategic assault from the inside, finding the strength to move despite his injuries. "I am your mind, Vespera. Use me." As if fate demanded it, Vespera pushed a specific, tactical image through the bond, a forgotten, ancient magical symbol from the sanctuary archives. It was a carving on the north wall, a symbol Rhys's father used to mark structural flaws. "A drain tunnel," Rhys mumbled, recognizing the symbol instantly. The archives weren't just for books, they were for secrets. The symbol marked an intake pipe leading right beneath the facility's main generator room, the weakness Vespera must have noted when she was surveying the perimeter. That's why Rhys trusted her completely now. She wasn't relying on brute force. She was using his pack's own history against the enemy, embracing both old and new knowledge. Without thinking, Rhys focused on the wall of his cell. The metal was thick, but the intake vent for air conditioning was only secured by 4 ancient bolts, bolts that would loosen if subjected to extreme, sustained resonance. He began to hum, using his wounded, unshifted lungs to push a subsonic frequency against the steel. It was weak, agonizingly slow work, but it was his only weapon. "I will buy her time." Vespera's internal transformation is complete, which reflects as the final turning point for Rhys. He trusts her completely now. He knew what he needed to do. Chapter 20. The Strategist's Sabotage. The subsonic hum worked. Hours later, the vent cover rattled loose with a quiet thunk. After that subtle victory, Rhys was free from his immediate captivity. He was still sluggish, the wound in his thigh burning, but his mind was sharp, driven by Vespera's distant, focused alpha energy. His goal was to create tactical chaos and a diversion for her external assault team. He found the facility's communication center. Instead of fighting, Rhys used his injured, non-shifting body to pull the wires, not randomly, but based on Vespera's earlier lesson: disrupt the primary communications array first, then the secondary surveillance. He used a discarded hunter knife to slice the optical fibers, clean, efficient, and irreversible. Because of that calculated action, the emergency lights flickered, and the facility was plunged into disorganized darkness. He was focused, strategic, using his mind as a weapon, fully embracing the human side of warfare he learned from Vespera. Not only that, but Rhys felt a strange, new lightness. He proved his worth outside of physical power. He was no longer the reluctant alpha. He was the ruthless strategist his people needed, completing his shift from reliance on brawn to reliance on brain. The old Rhys would have tried to shift and charge. The new Rhys sabotaged the enemy's network from the shadows. Suddenly, the sound of fighting erupted outside. Vespera's team had breached the perimeter, using the distraction he created. As the bond pulsed, Rhys felt Vespera's proximity, surging and feral. He pushed himself toward the exit, dragging his wounded leg. What followed was the sight of Vespera, covered in blood and dust, standing on the perimeter, having just taken down the guard post single-handedly. She saw him, and her gold eyes softened for a fraction of a second, a raw flicker of relief and acceptance before snapping back to battle readiness. He was alive. He was useful. He was hers. Chapter 21. The United Front. The scent of blood and gunpowder was now overlaid by Vespera's potent, demanding alpha musk. After that breathless meeting, they exchanged a single, silent look of complete, final alignment. There was no need for words. The bond carried everything go.
Lead.
Together. Vespera's body shifted instantly, a crackle of power and fur, leaving behind the powerful, immense black wolf. Her golden eyes locked on Rhys, demanding action. Rhys leaned heavily on a discarded hunter rifle, useless as a weapon but perfect as a crutch. He was the mind, she was the muscle. They had achieved their goal, secure a decisive victory by acting as one, unified command. Meanwhile, the combined forces, Liam's old pack, Vespera's new urban pack, and a few of the Kaelan survivors, waited for the command. They watched the two alphas, one a fierce, primal wolf, the other a wounded, determined man, standing together. Rhys raised the rifle like a baton, pointing toward the main tunnel. "They have chemical countermeasures in the eastern wing," he rasped, his voice raw but steady. "Vespera, and I draw them into the north. Liam, take the west flank now and use smoke, not scent." With every step he took, Rhys felt his state shift to focused alpha rage, total unity with Vespera, anticipating the end. He gave the command, and Vespera surged forward. The climax was set, with Rhys acting as the strategic mind, the hunter strategy, and Vespera as the fierce, primal force, the alpha's power. The roar of the combined Kaelan and Rhys's packs clashes with the crackle of the Order's specialized weapons. Their final, desperate fight began, guided by the wounded man and led by the primal wolf. Chapter 22. The Climax. United Alphas. The final confrontation was a symphony of chaos, snarls, shouts, and the whiz of specialized darts. After that command, Rhys watched Vespera move. Her wolf form was unlike any he had ever seen. Faster, quieter, utilizing terrain and shadow, not just brute strength. Rhys used Vespera's hunter tactics, feinting a retreat into a narrow, smoke-filled corridor. As the air thickened, the Order's leader, the antagonist, took the bait, believing the wounded alpha was fleeing. "He's mine. Kill the bitch," the antagonist shouted into his comms, chasing Rhys down the smoke-filled corridor. But then, the corridor was a containment zone. Rhys stopped short, the smoke clearing just enough to reveal Vespera, who had circled back through the maintenance tunnels. The antagonist froze, realizing he had been maneuvered. Vespera unleashed a full-power alpha roar, aimed not at the man, but at the surrounding environment. It hit the sonic jamming fields, causing a feedback loop that violently suppressed the entire ring of surrounding hunters. They dropped, clutching their ears, incapacitated. Rhys, operating in peak intensity, completely synchronized with Vespera, didn't even look at the other hunters. He focused entirely on the leader. "You told Vespera I was weak, antagonist," Rhys said, tossing the useless rifle aside. "You were wrong. I was waiting for the perfect weapon." He nodded to Vespera. The antagonist, momentarily distracted by Vespera's ferocious gaze, didn't see Rhys's hand move. Rhys used a psychological feint, pretending to reach for a hidden gun, but instead, he triggered the sonic jammer feedback a second time, shattering the antagonist's weapon sight. The antagonist cried out, dropping the specialized anti-alpha weapon. Rhys won not with strength, but with strategy and the acceptance of his mate's methods. He kicked the weapon away. The main conflict is resolved. Vespera shifted back, standing over the kneeling antagonist. The silence was deafening, punctuated only by the heavy breathing of the two alphas. The antagonist is defeated, and the combined power of the two alphas was undeniable. Chapter 23: Falling Action. The Confession and Healing. The facility was secured. The remaining Order hunters were bound and silenced. After that terrifying silence, Rhys's first action wasn't to heal his leg, but to face Vespera. He brought her to the captive antagonist, who was shackled and defeated. Rhys pulled the old, leather journal from his coat, the one he'd secured during his escape. He handed it to Vespera, letting her read his father's cryptic entry about the third scent. "The lie ends here," Rhys stated, his voice ringing with authority. He addressed the captive.
Tell her.
"All of it. Now." The antagonist, broken by the alpha commands and facing execution, had no choice. He confessed, detailing the ambush, the manipulation, and the years of misinformation that drove Vespera's vengeance. Vespera's vengeance motivation is resolved by truth. Her face, usually a mask of control, crumpled in pain, grief, and profound relief. Because of that confession, Rhys's guilt was lifted, replaced by the weight of their shared future. As the bond pulsed with empathy, Rhys reached out, taking her hands. They were both scarred, Rhys's from the hunter venom, Vespera's from her self-inflicted pain. Their hands interlock in a powerful affirmation, a final cementing of their emotional bond. With a single glance, Vespera understood. Her family's memory was validated. The war was never against Rhys. It was against the lie. Rhys had finally healed the deep, historic wound between their packs. Chapter 24: Resolution. The CO Alpha Oath. The sanctuary ruins, the burial grounds, were now secured, rebuilt with Vespera's advanced, layered security. Come morning, Rhys and Vespera stood side by side before the combined packs. The air was charged with nervous hope. Liam stood stiffly in the front, his pride wounded but his loyalty tested and proven. Rhys, still leaning slightly on a cane, spoke first. "We won a war that started with a lie. I, Alpha Rhys, clung to the old ways, to mercy, to trust, and it nearly destroyed us all. I was waiting for the perfect weapon to save us." He looked at Vespera, his eyes warm, accepting. "I found the perfect leader." He delivered a formal oath, recognizing Vespera's strategic mind as essential. Vespera Kalen is not a captive. She is not a rival. She is the co-alpha of this united pack. Her ruthlessness, her vigilance, and her knowledge of the enemy are the shields we need for the future. Liam hesitated for only a second, but then he dropped to one knee, bowing in full acceptance to both of them. Co-alpha Vespera, Alpha Rhys. The combined packs followed suit. Rhys completed his transformation. He is no longer the reluctant alpha clinging to the past, but a forward-thinking co-leader who values fierce protection above misplaced trust. The final confrontation is set, and the packs mingle, the hunter scent and the pack scent fully harmonizing under their joint command. The tension was gone, replaced by a quiet, shared determination. Epilogue: The New Equilibrium. 6 months later. The rebuilt sanctuary porch smelled of fresh-cut cedar, pine, and the comforting, constant scent of Vespera. Rhys sat, his injured leg fully healed, on the porch. Vespera was next to him, her posture relaxed but still alert, reviewing city intelligence reports on a sleek, non-pack-issued tablet. After that brutal fight, they had found domestic comfort in the new equilibrium. Rhys rested his head on her shoulder. The pure scent of her alpha nature, mixed with the strange metallic tang of the hunter, was home. "The pup, Marco," Rhys murmured, his voice lazy, content. "He's still struggling with the half-shift. Too much fear, not enough focus." Vespera set her tablet down, running a steady, strong hand across his cheek. "He needs a specific type of discipline, Rhys. Not comfort. He needs to embrace the moment of maximum danger." "I know," Rhys chuckled, kissing her palm. He was now peaceful, settled, completely protected and protective. He had learned to embrace the ferocity. The alpha who was afraid of connection had found strength in the fierce protection of his mate, successfully merging the wild pack with the modern hunter strategy. As the bond pulsed softly between them, Rhys looked out over the woods, the new layered laser grids faintly visible beneath the trees. He knew they were safe, not because of walls or traditions, but because the fierce woman beside him was finally, wholly his.